Hello, welcome Internet land and Facebook Live people. Coming to you live tonight, Sylph, Dominic, Hawkins, on Wednesday, it's good that I can check the calendar. So, this Wednesday, 6th of May, I hope that you guys are well. We're going to just give a few minutes. I'm sorry I'm a minute or two late, so I'll wait for you guys to jump on and then we'll get started. I hope that this week, hi everyone, I hope that this week has been good for you and that, in the wake with the warmer weather today and yesterday, I personally really loved it. I've been just a bit of a douche all week, I think, with the, hi Hannah, with the cold weather. Oh, it takes me a while to get used to it. So, here's hoping that you're well. Your families are well. Hey Amber. Hoping that you guys are just, pretty settled into the routine at this time with 2020 super COVID virus fun. And that these videos are just helping to give you something to focus on and just develop your sense of self from there. So tonight we're moving on to meditation energy work session 6. Is it 6 or 7? I better check and then write it correctly in the title of the video. Last week what we did a lot of work on was some oscillating breath work. So we were breathing and experiencing the sensations of nervous system observation in the left hand and the right hand, and then bouncing them, hi Morris, and then bouncing them from there with the feet and then up and down. And then we started to talk about how you could use those to oscillate observation of sensation in different contrasting parts of the body. You could use that as an activity. When you spent a long time really focusing on the experiences, the nervous system sensations and experiences of the fingers of the left hand and the whole left hand, then that becomes almost like a go-to point. You can use that in the future. You can use that as something to very quickly, you close your eyes, you take 2 or 3 breaths, and then bam, that you find that your hand is easy to experience through mental observation. Sensation, air temperature changes, drafts of air against the skin, things like that. And then you use that as a reference and you go, okay, now I'm gonna focus on that, think about that, experience those feelings, and then take my attention to my right hand. And you just use them as contrasts, something that you're very well established as a reference in your feeling. You've developed neurological pathways. It's very easy for you to get into the state of mind to begin experiencing and honing in on the nervous system sensation. So you really can just take a moment and now feel the differing temperature between the air and your skin. Feel some of the drafts of cool air and how they move, especially with your breath, yeah? So you can move that quite quickly. And then now take your attention to some part of the body, for example, using the right hand. Hi, Stacey. Which maybe is less practiced. Or the left wrist. So I was like, the right wrist. Or the left hand and the right foot. Or the left hand and the left foot. Or just the hands in general and the feet. And what slowly happens is as you move your attention from the thing that is a solid reference, it's very easy for you to experience nervous system sensation there. And then you move to something where it's a little bit harder, and then back again. It should be very easy, it should be instantly back. And then to your hand again, and then back, and then instantly back. The more you oscillate and you bounce, the contrast of your observation in that way, then the easier it is. It helps you because slowly it's like the gap is getting wider and wider and wider. And it helps you to tee up what it is you're actually looking for, what it is specifically in this hand that isn't there, but it is there. It's fascinating. And then usually within maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes of practice of that, then you can get this hand up to the same level of intensity as that hand. So it's easy with the hands. It's usually easy to do this kind of sense observation type of meditation with any part of the body that you devote a lot of fine motor skill time to. So if you're constantly, if you're someone who works with their hands a lot, even like typing or piano or guitar playing or writing or you're a flower arranger, different things, things. You're an engineer, you're twisting things. Pretty much any occupation that I can really think of that really requires dexterity in the hands is going to have required you to have at some level really extended your observation and your ability to connect with nervous system response in the hands is going to be far, far higher than potentially in your feet or in your knees, or in your hips, for example. So it's not surprising that when you take your mind into looking around your body in this kind of meditation, that you will find parts of the body that are very difficult for you to experience mentally. Other parts that are really easy. Like I take my left hand, before I even finish taking a breath, I can feel the buzzing of the hand. Suddenly I can experience the details and sensation of the air and the cool air moving over the skin of my palm. And I can feel kind of like a little twinge on one of the tendons on my back finger, keeping on my hand, my fingers so straight. So it's like all of that information became apparent. It didn't take long, but that's because I've repeated that process so much. Yeah, my feet, I've done that slightly less. So it makes kind of logical sense that if I took my attention to my feet, maybe it should take a breath, before lots of that detail through the sensation starts to become apparent. Now the hands and the feet, if we're talking about most kind of the parts of the body areas that are really going to be the easiest to feel into, they make sense. You're constantly walking around, the soles of your feet are constantly interacting, even if you're in shoes, with the actual shoe, the sock, if you're in bare feet, over the rocks, and as your foot is curling and changing in shape, moving in the heat and the coolness of the ground. So there's a lot of constant information being fed there that in the background of your mind, you've probably developed some neurological pathways to the fast interpretation of that information, observation of that. So hands and feet are usually where we start with these meditations for that reason. It's easy, you bounce back and forward. And then you want to start moving to sections of the body that are less, not even easy to experience. They're just parts of the body that you don't normally devote that much time to, like your left elbow. Like it's there, and it's cool. And every now and then you directly think about your left elbow. And every now and then you injure your left elbow, and then you feel it greatly. And every now and then you probably use your left elbow. But there's no way that your left elbow is occupying as much thought time as your hands are in your neurology. No way in hell. No, if you still have hands, that's not true. Yeah, maybe if you don't have hands anymore, that's true. So then it would be us saying, okay, well, if I spend some time breathing, that's what we're going to do tonight. I'm gonna look at the sense of observation of experience of the elbow and the surrounding tissue of the elbow, the bone, tendons of the elbow, the flesh, and you're just going to look at that. And what we should find, unless you've been doing this a lot beforehand, is that it should take a little bit of time. Yeah. And then we move to the other elbow, and it should take a little bit of time. And then we compare the elbows, it should be easier. And then maybe we'll go from the elbows to the knees, and we'll go, when was the last time that how much time do you think you devote each day to consciously being aware of the feedback of information from your knees? Lots of details. I'm not talking just if you've got achy knees. That's one very specific tactile sense. What about it's very cold, I'm wearing long pants. If you were sitting here in shorts, could you actually take a moment and breathe and experience the coolness of the air in the surrounding room around the skin of the knee? So easy to do the hand. I can put that here. I breathe away from my hands. Made that mistake before. Oh my God, it's everywhere. So you move, like even just subtle movements of the hand. I can feel lots of ridges of cold air and very vast temperature differences. Do that experience with your knee. Hone into really specific areas of the knee and the flesh where you can experience very rapidly changing levels of information about the drafts in the room. And a lot of people would think you're nuts. You're like, why are you devoting your Wednesday night? You're sitting down for an hour. You could be doing things. There's a lot of stuff on Netflix instead. But you're devoting your time to sit down and really think about your knees and really experience the temperature of the air around your knees. And just don't bother trying to explain it to anyone who's not prepared to to listen because it sounds ridiculous, you know. It's like if you didn't have a reason for doing that, then why the hell would you do that? There's no, in terms of what we usually value in our time, there's no immediate payback for that, yeah? So it brings up a question that we're going to address tonight. What is the purpose of meditation, really? Like, long-term, overall, transcendentally, what is the purpose of all of this? Why is this session 6 of effectively breathe lots and experience your sensations? You know, why are there 6 hours now of these videos of that? Why are there whole books written about this? Because it's useful to dialogue about that and just kind of get it out there. Some of it's funny. Sometimes it's really worth noting that it's like, man, sometimes I kind of fall off the bandwagon of remembering the feeling and the sensations that I really enjoy experiencing just day to day, week to week. And usually I'm in a bit of a funk the last couple of days. And then it's easy to forget what my goal was, what my purpose was in this practice. And then I don't bother anymore. You know, if I've forgotten why I'm doing this and what it is I'm reaching for in this, or even what my overall question is, then I don't devote 2 hours a day to sitting and looking at my hand. You know, if I've forgotten what my overarching direction with that was for, I just get on with other stuff. I just make money and watch Netflix and, I don't know, fix the house and have fun and do projects. I don't sit down and go, ooh, I have nothing to do. I'm going to look at my hand for 2 hours. Unless I have an actual reason for doing that. Maybe that's just me. Some of you might be far more motivated by just the experiences. But for me, there's something more to it. There's a really solid, tangible experience that I'm getting. And every time that I sit down and I devote my time to that, observing my body sensations, not just the feeling, but also the sounds I can hear, etc., the taste, the smells. There are visceral changes to me, mentally and emotionally and physically, and I really like those changes. I really like what happens. I really like the side effect, effectively, mentally. I like what happens in my mind when I listen to the sounds that I can hear. And I like what happens to my ability to reason and to hone in on facts and to use logic and strategy and really genuinely think something through with my mind. I like that I can do that better when I listen to the sounds that I can hear, when I smell the smells that I can smell, when I taste what I can taste, when I see what I can see, and when I feel tactilely what I can feel. There are a series of very specific changes that occur within me and within my mind, my neurology, and also my psychology, and emotionally for me, that are worth gold. Those things are like, how much would I otherwise pay if I was to go to work instead and devote those working hours? If I could get enough money to pay to just have those experiences, how much would that cost me? Who would I pay, and how much would that cost? You know, like let's say I'm working for $100 an hour. How many hours do I have to work to be able to pay who for the ability to experience the waves of my thinking and experience the intercorrelation of that with my emotional changes, and then just fly back in my mind and experience this kind of broad perspective. And one of the side effects being my heart rate just lowers slightly, and it feels like there's more space in my mind. Like, how much is that worth? Dollar for dollar, you know? Do I devote an hour of my time to doing that? Or do I devote an hour of my time to getting $100 to then be able to pay how much I need for that? It's like, well, you can't correlate the two of those. There's a Buddhist story. I don't know which particular strain. It might be Vipassana. Sorry. There might be Vajrayana, and the Tibetan style, and it's a story about a monk who's in this desert. I think I've said this before in a different context, and he's sort of living out his life effectively, doing his monk things, and the king of the country is going through a very, very difficult time, and the king is really nervous. He's and it's just upheaving. He's up all night. He can't sleep. He's making incorrect decisions, and he feels the weight of the responsibility of the kingdom and his people. And so he sends out his right-hand man, because he lost his other hand in battle. I like that joke. He sends out his right-hand man and says, find me the wisest person in the lands. So this person goes off and rides on a steed, and it's an epic adventure, and travels from village to village to village, and asking, I know, right? and asks, and then is led to this cave in the mountains, in this forest. It's all very archetypal, and he finds this monk and says to the monk, he explains the predicament of the king. The king is offering, treasure vaults of gold for anyone who can, a wise person who can help him find solace in this mess. And so the monk says, okay, I will bring the most special, sacred item that I can get that will help your king. I will need 1 bar of gold, upfront payment to do this, and the rest I require at the time of delivery, effectively. And so, the right-hand man says, yes, of course, hands over the gold and bags of coins to this hermit monk, rides off, and the monk says, okay, I will come when this is ready. I will be in touch within a month. Man goes right back, tells the king, help is coming, okay, just 1 month, and it's the wisest man in the world, but you better get the vaults ready, because, he charged a whole bar of gold up front. God only knows what he's going to charge us for his actual consulting fee in 800 AD. So a month passes, and the monk has taken the gold and done something very important with it, and comes back. And he finds his way to this city, to the castle, and comes in. He's bearing this beautiful, ornate golden box. The box is made out of gold. Gold sides, gold handles, gold, beautiful embroidery, and a gold lid, gold hinges. And he comes bearing this on a golden pillow. And he brings it into the throne room, the chamber with the king. And the king's like, oh, thank God, he's almost pulled out all of his hair, and he's weeping, crying. He hasn't slept for months. He comes in, the monk walks up to the king and says, I have brought the treasure that was requested. He says, but first I require payment. And the king says, oh, yes. Basically asks the right-hand man, comes out, and he wheels out just trolleys of gold bars and diamonds and rubies and coins, and just in piles. It says all of it. I'll take my entire kingdom's worth if you can help me with this dilemma. And the monk says, right, well, first I need a table to place this on. Oh my God, yeah, they go get the best table in the entire castle and put it down. And the monk puts this treasure box on, and he says to the king, okay, I will step away from the box, but it's very important that I tell you that actually the object that's within this box is priceless. You don't even have enough money. I thought about you. You're the king of this country. I thought about the amount of gold and diamonds and worth and rubies that you would have. And I realized that you don't actually have enough money to pay for this. You probably will never have enough money to pay for what this is actually worth. So I've decided to give it to you as a present, as a gift instead. And the king's, bursts into tears. Oh my God, incredible. Comes up, and the monk walks back, and the king opens the golden treasure chest with the golden pillow and lifts it up, and inside is a golden ring. And you can see what he used the bar of gold for. The golden ring he picks up, and he says, I don't understand. And the monk says, there's an inscription in the ring. All you need to do is wear the ring, and whenever things come up in your life, I want you to take off the ring and read the inscription. And so the king lifts the ring up, and the inscription says, this too shall pass. And the story ends. The monk leaves the golden little treasure box in the treasure chamber, leaves the trolleys of gold, and goes and returns to his time in the mountains. And then the story ends. Really, I would have taken the trolleys of gold and given the king the ring as well, but times have changed, and I'm not particularly enlightened. So anyway, I've already got 2 rings made at half the weight of gold each. But you can see that the real gem in the story is this idea that the information that he was providing to the king has come about through the monk's work. And the work that the monk was doing, the work meaning like the application of his labor, of his time, of his thoughts, of his soul, the work he was doing wasn't particularly countable in quantifiable terms. He wasn't producing 1 chair a day from his little hermit meditation cave. And so he couldn't value the gifts that he had to offer in the ordinary sense of commodity. He didn't have a representation of what it was that he was churning out on a daily basis. He couldn't calculate his GDP of all hermits in the land, So what happened was, at the time where the king actually required help, the person in the land who had spent time just observing the cycles of life, something that comes through meditation, the observation of the ups and downs, the realization, therefore, through enough observation, the realization that this is just kind of going to keep happening. And maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe there are ups because there are downs. Interesting. Maybe there's downs because there are ups. Maybe that process is just reflected in nature, in the world around us. And that's not something that humans are going to extract ourselves from into some kind of weirdly stale, upward, permanent trend of everything. That doesn't exist anywhere. So why would we think, when we look at the world, we look at the universe, and we don't see that, why would we expect that in our own selves? Why would we expect that in our lives? And so the time comes where the king needs this information. The person who has that information is the hermit, and the monk, and he's gained that through his observation, his just quiet contemplation of what is, of his observation of things he can feel and see and smell and taste and touch, and just watching society rise and fall and having enough perspective. There's a very good reason why all of these stories are metaphorically on the mountain. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. It's always a hermit who lives on the mountain, the wise monk on the temple in the mountain. They're always in mountains. It's always meant to suggest perspective, high perspective, observing the happenings of the city people in the valley below, the observing from a great height. Yeah, this idea of that's what happens to your perspective mentally in terms of your observation of your experience through those processes. So they're presented in metaphors in the stories. Yeah. Now the king finds this person. Thankfully, there was someone in his kingdom living on the mountain in his cave somewhere who had, for whatever reason, decided he wanted to devote the time to his observation. And in the process of that, one of the byproducts was he started to learn a lot of simple truths about the experience of the human dilemma, or the experience of the world and the human's perspective of it. And then that's exactly what the answer to that question is, what the monk had found. And it was the question that the king asked. So the king goes and he's still thinking in a quantifiable term, thinking that this is something he can get. Still thinking that, okay, well, I need to find the person who's producing the commodity box that says answer to all of my problems. And it's going to cost 240,000 bars of gold and 16 diamonds. And that's going to be the cost of that commodity. And then I trade them that, and they get gold and rubies and diamonds, and I get box that answers all of my questions. And so from that perspective, some essays on that particular story go into discussing this idea that the king's thought about that is already flawed right from day one. If he still thinks that this is something he can get or obtain, if he thinks that this is something that someone is going to be able to solve for him, his own personal dilemma, there's a problem there with the language, isn't it? How can it be a personal dilemma if other people can fix it for you? Like self-help groups. It doesn't work. So how could this be a solution for the king when he told his lieutenant to go search for the wise person? He couldn't contemplate really what the answer to his problem could be, because he's still coming at it from the perspective of having a problem, having an insurmountable issue that he can't solve, hoping for external gratification. And then the monk comes and leads him on, for a good month, gets the bar of gold, uses the gold and gets it converted, turned into a golden treasure chest with golden inlay and a golden pillow with golden hinges, and then has the gold melted produced into a golden ring, and inscription into the ring, and then presents the ring. But at the final moment, when the king is like, I'm about to get the thing that I want, and I'm about to exchange, it's a business transaction. You get 200 million bars of gold, whatever, and rubies, and I get the thing that solves all my problems. Well, if the monk had taken all the gold and the rubies and the diamonds, and then exchanged that for the ring, for the message in the ring, well, then the monk is still responsible for the ring, yeah? Then the monk is the one who, when the ring doesn't answer the king's problems immediately, the monk is the one who is at fault. It was the wrong information, you didn't tell me what I wanted, you've taken the money and you didn't even give me this, right? Behead the monk, kill the monk, get the gold back, and the king gets to go on blaming, thinking that that someone else is going to solve his problems. By very, very tactfully, at the final moment, the monk, the king wheels out trolleys of gold and diamonds, and the monk says, I've worked out that actually you don't have enough money for this. You don't have enough resources to pay me the value that this is actually worth. It's very true on many levels, yeah? So what he does is he disarms the entire operation. It's no longer a business transaction. He gives a gift. So he presents as a loving gift to the king some words of assurance to say in the inscription of the ring, this too shall pass. And then he leaves. And so now when the king is angered by the fact that doesn't immediately solve his problem, he doesn't read the ring and go, and suddenly the crops spring to life and the rains come and his people stop revolting, then he no longer gets to claim back the business transaction from the monk. Yeah, this was just a gift given to the king as a token of like a sense of observing the king's humility, that the king didn't actually deserve this in the first place because he couldn't afford it. So the king didn't deserve this gift. The last thing in the world he could do is now blame the monk for having provided the wrong information. And so what it does is it causes the king to leave the ring on his finger. And at first, nothing's solved in his kingdom. There's still a famine and people are still dying and there's still this event and there's still these problems. But every time that he's feeling really worrying, this is it, oh my God, I have to solve this problem, he pulls out the ring and he reads the inscription, and it reminds him that there's a cycle to all things, and it simply reminds him that this too shall pass. And he puts the ring on, and maybe he feels like, 1% better. Or he kind of just decides, you know what, okay, I don't actually know the answer to my question right now. So I've been reminded, if I don't know the answer to the question, maybe I'm just going to chill for a little bit. Because something will come. I'm just going to see what comes. I'm just going to have a look what happens tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and the famine still hasn't fixed itself. And magically the crops haven't sprung 40 meters in height. There aren't 40 meter high corn with cobs growing in all the land. So he pulls out the ring, he's still really nervous, he looks and he reads it, still shall pass. And what it does is it helps to slowly draw his perspective back to this mountain perspective. And by doing so, he starts making decisions that are more well thought out. Yeah. The rest of the story, a lot of the stories just end at those points, but there are people who've written over the centuries, people who've written annotations and continuations onto the stories to suggest follow-ons, little sequels, and they're interesting. And often with that one, some of the sequels that you find that are suggested are this idea that the king slowly, through just gaining insight and then being able to experience some relief, draw his mental perspective back, he starts actually making decisions that govern the kingdom really well. So he's able to become a great ruler, not because the ring gave him any magical powers, but because the ring reminded him of something that he already knew to be true but had forgotten. All things move in cycles, and he could step back and look at the perspective, like from the mountain, and he could see strategically. He could see things on the horizon that were coming. If they were in an incredible crop year, if for 10 years they had 100-meter high corn crops, and it was just unbelievable. The king knew that that wasn't going to last. The king, because part of the story is that the king reads the ring during good times and bad, and that he something terrible happens. He reads the ring, and it softens the blow, being like, oh, this too shall pass. But conversely, something wonderful happens, and he reads the ring, and he's kind of pulled down slightly from the heights of his ecstasy, because the ring reminds him that this too shall pass. And it's not meant to level out to this emotionless playing field. It just tucks the highs and the lows in a little bit. And it's this thing where he realizes that to rule well for his people, when times are good, he realizes that they will end and that there will be cycles. So there are good crops now. We should use the crops to do something worthwhile. We should store. We should use them. We should sell them with our neighbors. They say, we should get whatever funds and gold for it. But you know what? This isn't going to last forever, and I can't eat gold. So I'm not actually just going to hoard the gold for my good time. Maybe I can use the gold to expand the agriculture. Maybe we're going to use the gold and we're going to build more farms or whatever, or we're going to increase in some way, because I know that hard times are coming again. I mean, good times now. I know that hard times will come again. So I'm like, who knows? He's 2 or 3 years away from that. He starts strategizing. Then when they come, it's not as hard. Not out of magic, but because he was able to strategize towards that. Yeah. One of my awesome favorite quotes was from a business analyst. He said, "Funny is the damnedest thing. The harder I work, the luckier I become." And I think that's a brilliant comment. It kind of adds into this. I certainly think that there's a lot more going on in the world and the universe than just our human observable experiences, definitely. But we certainly make our own luck, that's for sure. So part of this meditation, part of these practices, part of the reason that there's 6 hours of these videos now, or there will be at the end of this, and we keep doing this, and that this is such an important part of the black belt grades and sections of Hoshin, and always has been, is because this kind of product that you're developing, this kind of skill, this is your ability when times are tough, when times are hard, to be able to soften the perspective and remind yourself that good times have to come. Things always get better. There's always an up. Yeah. So you're like, things are really hard now. Things will be good again in the future. And so it helps you continue working towards that. You can put things into correct perspective. The world isn't ending. Even if it's ending, it's probably not ending in the way you think it's ending, etc., etc., etc. It's never like, oh, this is the end. No, there's always cycles. And conversely, when you're riding the top, it helps you to pull back in from the greed of really thinking that this is going to last forever. When you you set up, you're the only person in your town who sells bookshelves. And so you charge $100 million a bookshelf and people just have to pay. If you legitimately think that that's going to last for a long time, you're a fool. Someone will come in and go, oh, I'm going to make bookshelves and I'm going to charge $100. And your entire business empire folds in a week, yeah? If you had done that and you happened to be the first person in your town making bookshelves and you could charge a higher price for the bookshelves, wouldn't it be prudent for you to be like, this isn't going to last. This is great. Maybe I can do something. And you know what? I am going to keep charging $1 million a bookshelf because that's just what I want to charge for the bookshelves. Whatever. It's not even a moral discussion. It's what I want to charge. People are paying it. Great. But I know that that's not going to last. I know people aren't going to pay $1 million for a bookshelf forever. Someone's going to come in and make a cheaper bookshelf. I'm gonna take all the money and I'm gonna strategize with that. I'm gonna plan things, and I'm gonna make sure that I don't really need bookshelves to be $1 million. It's just fun while it is. And then Joe Blogs comes in, sets up Bookshelves Are Us, Bookshelves and Sons, and undercuts you massively and takes half of your money. And suddenly you go, okay, great. Well, you knew this was coming. It's not a shock. It's not a surprise. You drop your bookshelves from $100 million to $100 a shelf, and you're getting half your customers back. And meanwhile, you also decided that you're going to move into tables, and you set up your money from bookshelves, funded an entire table factory. See, that's just these days we call that like business strategy and smart planning. It's all buzzwords, but like really, these are the things that come through wisdom of observing the ups and downs and the cycles. That the direct access to that, if you don't want to read someone else's book about their experience of observing ups and down cycles, you have to have your own. The direct path to that is just experiencing, observing. You listen, you smell, you taste, you see, you touch, and all of the information that you need is there. And you find, like imagine for a child, so it's coming into winter now, imagine for a child who's born in summer, how bizarre winter must be. Imagine a child who's born in, let's say they're born in December, just Christmas, and then it's been like 5 months, and all of a sudden this really weird thing is happening. Something very strange is happening, you know. It's not what's been happening for the last couple of months. That is totally out of context. And so if you were, it would be like a farmer not knowing that there were seasons. And there's also stories about this concept. So the farmer, takes seeds, just assumes that it's always spring or it's always summertime, and just reaps the seeds. So roots seeds, sows the seeds, tills and sows, and just reaps the fruit, and continually does this, and never thinks to save the seeds, because why would you have to? It's like, for the last 4 or 5 months, I've just had tomatoes, great. Tomatoes, an upward trend. And then suddenly winter comes and all the tomatoes die, and they don't live underground. If you didn't save seeds, that tomatoes gone. You know, if you're the only person in the world who had tomatoes and you forgot to save seeds, well, too bad, world, there's no more tomatoes, they're gone. So it's like, wow, to us that seems ridiculous. How could you not know that there's seasons? But it's only because we've actually had to experience the sensation of the changes, you know. Like, I don't like the cold, but it reminds me that there's cycles. And it's actually one of the reasons I moved from Sydney. I was felt at the time, there's lots of reasons that I moved, but one of them was that I really wanted to experience legitimate seasons, not kind of a little bit cold, you know, in Sydney on a beach. It was lovely, don't get me wrong, I'll definitely retire to a beach. But there's something magical, there's something that living in Melbourne with the extremes in these seasons and feeling it on my cheeks, I can feel the bitter cold when I go out and it's 4 a.m. and I'm like, and it's so cold. You know, that's really enlivening. I'm living out through my experience, and there's cycles. And you know what it reminds me? I think of that ring in the story, in the Buddha story, and I'm in the middle of winter and it's 1 degree, and I think this too shall pass. I know that summer is coming again. And in summer, I love summer. In the back of my mind, I think, well, this too shall pass. I know that winter is coming again. So let's really enjoy summer. You know, let's just like have fun and enjoy, and let's take stock of it. I'm not blinded to the idea that it's going to be summer forever. Yeah. So hopefully that puts some perspective into some of the values of this activity and this work. And it doesn't have to be, you're not going to go out and devote, you know, a 42-hour working full-time week to being a cave hermit monk. You know, like some people want to, and that's cool. Personally, I think that if your meditation experience, the universe, doesn't meet up into a practical human endeavor with an interaction with other humans, then you don't have value in society. And on an individual level, that's whatever. Who cares? That's great. But I really believe in the society of human beings. Quite conservatively, like the values of society of human beings, and I think that we probably benefit most from personal transcendence and spiritual experiences when those experiences filter out just day to day into everyone's normal lives, so that the wisdom of those experiences is accessible to everyone, so that, like I said, the king who, imagine if it was just kind of common knowledge to the king that this too shall pass. He didn't really need to go and seek a monk in the mountaintop, you know. And then the monk in the mountaintop didn't necessarily need to be in a cave for 50 years on a mountaintop. He also maybe likes being a carpenter. He likes making tables, you know. Maybe he's able to do both, and the pressures of society are such that he can do both. It's not like he's forced to be in one, and then you get this weird skewing, and it's from that I think these ideas and these wisdoms don't trickle down through general society, and they do become moved into this field of the metaphysical, or somehow they get assigned to spiritual ideology, when you could probably say that these are just observing the human experience. It's a very humanistic idea. So one of the activities that we do is observing sense of sensation, sounds, smells, tastes, sights, touch. And what it does is it helps to inform us about the happenings of the world. And when we do that just once, that's fun. When we do it twice, it's cool. We've got a little bit of reference. When we do that, every week for a year, we've built quite a library of just this background understanding of things, of the way that things are. Yeah. When we do that for 10 years, 20 years, because I've only been doing it for 20 years, I can't speak beyond that. I don't know what happens at 50. I assume the same, but I don't know what happens at 50. I grow wings. You've been doing that for 20 years. There's just some things that are just kind of known. And one of the things that I've always found this has done for me is, and this has come up in the strangest of places, sometimes I'll be having to negotiate something, like on a professional level or on a legal level, or there's something, or there's some reason that I'm having to dialogue in a negotiatory way on an official level, and the comments that I often get, not always, but the comments I often get from people are that I was strangely long-term in my thinking. That the other person is talking about things within a few weeks or a month, and then if and I get told, but I was talking about things in years and decades, and they were like, it's an interesting bit of feedback to have. And one person who even commented to me was saying, she said to me, wow, compared to, this is a third person who was involved in a discussion, myself and another person, and this third person, this mediator in that scenario, she said to me, you seem strangely detached from the outcomes of that, of like the actual details of the topic that's being argued about and negotiated about. I said, don't mistake what it is that I'm doing for some sort of detachment. Like, I'm highly passionate about those topics. It's just that I'm thinking 10 years and 20 years and 50 years from now about those topics, and the other person's thinking tomorrow, next week, and next month about those topics. And so because of our timelines, we have vastly different perspectives, and therefore observation of the cycles and what's going to occur in those perspectives changes the way that we're going to negotiate and what we think is important and our values. And so that is something that I know has come through this kind of work. And I said, the woman said to me, she said, what do you think it is? How is it that you came to that? And the answer came to me straight away. I said, it's because I'm going to die. I just know I'm going to die. I've watched so many of my friends die through some lovely, some violent ends, some just tedious ends, and some like really depressing ends, that I'm fully aware that I'm going to die. I've watched family die. Well, I know I'm going to die. I've watched family be born. I have my own children. I've seen them be born. Thankfully, I haven't had to see any of them die. Long-term goal is I go first kind of thing. But I'm not under any illusion that that this physical form won't be ended. And so when negotiating things, and that comes from this perspective, meditation, it's breath work. You just listen, you watch, you see that everywhere. The fruit tree that sprouts through spring, the budding leaves, the beautiful green, it grows, matures over the summer, it starts fleshing out the fruit, the harvest, the beautiful apples in autumn, and then the whole thing just sticks through winter. You're like, whoa, my poor tomatoes that I still plant year after year, even though my tomato crop just reduces. It's like, I get out, I plant them, seedlings, sometimes I save seeds, I sprout from seeds, or I plant seedlings from friends' plants, and then they grow through spring and it's beautiful, and summer, and then the crop is bountiful, and then in winter they're dead, like just withered. I touch them, they disintegrate into powder, and I'm like, well, all the life that was there is just gone. And not in a depressing way. It's like, one of my favorite lines from the prophet, And so I was reading that, I was talking about that last week, and for the dojo birthday last Friday, I put up an audio recording of me, little audiobook, it's 1 hour and 16 minutes or something, on the dojo page. So go and check that out on the Facebook page if you want. One of my favorite lines from that is this discussion about giving and receiving. And the author, Carl Gibran, he says in his prose, he says, let this be the season of giving, for one day all that you have will be given. So let the season of giving be yours rather than those who will inherit what you have. Or I paraphrase. And it always left quite a remark like, whoa, that's so true. All that I have is going to be given to the world eventually, at some point. If I want to enjoy reaping the experience of being a giver, I better damn well get that experience while I'm alive, because otherwise, if my children inherit everything that I have and then give it all away, that's great. They're the ones who get to revel in that experience. I kind of like to have that experience while I'm alive. It's fun, it'd be nice. And I don't even necessarily mean like, okay, no, I have to sell my house and give all the money away. I just mean it's nice when I feel like I want to give, I give because I enjoy the feeling of giving, not because I have some kind of moral altruism. It's just because it's entirely selfish. Yeah. I just like that feeling. That's why I do that. 10 points, lucky to the people who receive that. So those kind of perspectives, and answering that woman's question about, and my perspective, how it is that I came to view that, well, I know that I will die one day, so arguing these very short-term things is less interesting. When I'm in a good place, I want to argue decade-long, century-long things, That's all come from this work. And all I've had to do is just smell, taste, see, listen, feel, and that's about it. And just that compounded day after day, after week, after week, after month, after year, it's just like after decades, that's things just develop, it's just grow. It's like if you play piano every day, you're just going to get really good at piano. This is how that works. It's not that mystical, but I think what happens is in our, time poor self-flagellation of the modern era, this is not really something that people devote their time to. Who sits down and devotes their time to developing perspective through the experience of sensation? Imagine you went on a date. You met this person for the first time, and they're talking, and they say, "Oh, I'm an accountant." They go, "What are you doing?" And hobbies. Oh, they go, "Oh, no, I'm a musician." No, I don't even know. Some hobby. Hannah's gonna laugh at me for that. Well, they say one of my hobbies is I build doll houses as a hobby, and you go, "Oh, great." They go, "What's your hobby?" And you go, "I really love just contemplating the experience of life and just feeling the feeling of my hands." And they either just go, "Ooh," and they leave the date pretty quickly, or that leads to a whole interesting discussion where they're like, "Never met anyone like you. What do you mean? What do you mean, like that?" They go, because I go into my little studio and I've got boxes of dolls' houses of stuff, and I build and I like miniatures and I display them. And we get together and we have miniature festivals. What do you do if you like to experience the available sensations? Sounds weird. Sounds kind of creepy, even if you put it that way. So that date would be over damn quick. Lesson learned: don't ever bring that up on the first date. Wait for the second one. So it's like it's not that it's not fashionable. It's not that meditation isn't fashionable. It's not even that this kind of experience is difficult to obtain. It's just that it's not there immediately. It's not something that we're particularly well trained, because it's not a commodity. So usually our pastimes, our passions, our hobbies, our thoughts, they lead to accessible commodities. I can develop my thinking around something that will lead to an outcome. I can commercialize it. Even if we're talking like, for example, my physics research, my research in electrophysics, like that's a great passion of mine, and it literally produces objects. All of the hours, all of the years that I devote to thinking and my thought process and that experience, literally I could quantify as, here's that thought and I wrote it into that paper. Here's those 10 papers of that theory and that idea. here's the box I made. By implementing that, like, I can actually quantify my thinking about a topic, about a problem, about an issue. I can do that. I can go into the workshop and I can devote hours of my time to carving out wood, and I can come out with tables and chairs and boxes, you know, and all that's there. But I cannot create a commodity. I can't even quantify correctly what it is that I've been doing with my time by listening to the sounds that I can hear. And so it doesn't have a value. You don't measure that in GDP. They try, it doesn't work. Yeah? Because it only has value at the moment of requirement. And right up until that moment, it has $0 value. And then at the moment of requirement, it's priceless. In the story of the king and the monk. For the entire time that the king didn't need the monk, his value to the king was $0. He had no requirement or interest in the monk. The moment that the king needed the answer that the monk knew through his own self-wisdom, the king didn't have enough money in the world to pay for that. And so it's not even like a ramp. It's not even like you could say, okay, now it's helped me in this number of ways. I've become a life coach. God help us all. And then I've applied that to these people. I charge $400 an hour, and so I can accurately say the 10 hours I spent devoted to, you know, my personal discovery and transcendence in that area of my life has led to the $200 million I've made in this part of my life, and I've worked out a rough $700 per hour of time thinking worth value. Great, awesome, tick, tick, tick. And you're like, well, then that's not the application of your wisdom. That's the business commodity that you're producing. That's great, that's awesome, but that's not that. What you have that's really brilliantly, unfathomably needed isn't needed at all by anyone until it suddenly is. And it's good to make money. I love making money. But don't con yourself into thinking that you're ever going to be able to pay back the time in cash that you devote to your own personal transcendence. It will certainly make things better and easier for you, no doubt. Make much better decisions about your life financially and generally. But you're never going to recoup that. It's like buying a car. It's not an investment. You'll buy the car and you'll lose money. That's just what that does. But the purpose of the car shouldn't be a store of value for money. Yeah, it's not the purpose of the car. It's just meant to drive you around so you can have experiences. And maybe some of those get you money. Maybe you can sell the car and pay back some of the money. But the car's value to you, the vehicle's value, was in the experiences it could help you have. And the same is true of meditation, of these kinds of times that we devote to ourselves. That's what our hobbies are. You're not going to repay them. Oh my God, imagine you put a dollar value against them. Like, ugh. It's like, really, it's the whole purpose of that vehicle of the hobby is your enjoyment, or the whole purpose of the vehicle of your meditation time is your development of your wisdom of self, of you, your experience. And then you can answer your own questions, and maybe you can answer the questions of others, or at least point them in the direction, or at least say, go and sit on a mountain in the cave somewhere for 10 years. At least you've got something you can offer them. You can give them a practical approach. So it's not surprising that this is not more common knowledge, not because it's mystical, it's hidden in plain sight. It's because it doesn't have value back behind it that people can quantify in a way that when you have to choose between the mortgage and food for the kids and spending, a large portion of your time in whatever your self-transcendent like activities are that you've wandered into, one of them's kind of quite immediately pressing. Yeah, one of them's more right in front of your face. If you don't pay the mortgage, that's going to bite you in the ass really quickly. If you don't sit down and explore yourself, that's going to bite you in the ass decades later. You can write that off into your retirement, or at least your midlife crisis. I always thought it was just both ridiculous and hysterical that my father, when I was, about 18, 19. So when I left home, I was 16. When I left home, big row with my father, huge disagreements that had gone on for years. And I decided that I was done with that, and I left. And when we didn't speak for like a couple of years, I think it was a good 3 or 4 years that we really didn't talk. And really, I think the only reason that we actually developed a relationship anew was because he reached out to me in an email at the time. This is going back, years ago. And how old is he now? He's 40 older than me. So he was almost 60 at the time. He reached out in his email, and his email basically said, "I have this, Dom, I have this dilemma. These are the details. These are the events that are going on for me. This is the experience I'm having. It's this life-changing dilemma, and I have no one else that I can talk to. I have no one else around me who I feel I can dialogue about this with. Would love a reply." And it's like the first communication that I had had from him in years. And I thought, okay. And so I wrote back and we started this dialogue, and it was really just kind of normal questions about, these were dilemmas, without any details. The dilemmas were like pressing moment right now things. Oh, I have to make this decision that's going to end everything and change my entire experience. It's like, well, then maybe don't make that decision right now. No, but I have to. It's like, well, do you really? And it's just about perspective and experiencing things and just observing, kind of commenting on things. And I remember thinking, years later, wow, how weird that he was this man who was like almost 60, having this phenomenal midlife crisis, delayed a little bit. And he was reaching out to this like 18, 19-year-old. And I thought to myself, something's not right with that. Like, that's just not right. That's not how that should be. Surely there's an aggregate pyramiding of generational elder-based wisdom. Where is that? Why wasn't he asking people above him? Why didn't he know? Why weren't there other people in his life who he thought might have been able to help answer those questions? And I thought, I guarantee that he didn't reach out to me out of a sense of like loving familyness. The things that we said to each other when I left home put an end to that, and we hadn't spoken for years. So it was like he obviously reached out of desperation. And I thought, wow, if I was the one he reached out to out of desperation, things must be pretty bad. Like, things must be pretty dire. Crazy. That's like what I've said before about the fact that I run like a Hoshinden Jutaijutsu. Things must be really dire because there's a lot of other people who should be doing that who aren't. Anyway, funny stories. So I really think, and something that I really got from Hoshinden, from Glenn Morris's work in Hoshinden Jutaijutsu, that the value of what he called the warrior mystic, the value of that as a pastime, even, it doesn't have to be an occupation. The value of that as a hobby is incredibly important. It is priceless, and it's so helpful for so many people in society. Even that you can just be a nice person, even just looking at things and having some perspective. And I have my days up and down, but generally I'm a lovely person. It's not because I'm a victim of being lovely. I can be an absolute douche, and I can go out of my way, and I can be a prick if I want to be. I fully have the capability of manipulating and contorting circumstances and just ruining people. I can do that. And I just don't want to, because I don't want to contribute to that. I look overall, that's my broad perspective of the world. None of that has anything to do with the world I want to live in, or that I want my children to grow up in. And none of that lead towards long-term anything of value to me. Yeah, getting back to this selfish idea. So it's like, well, then when someone, I don't know, maybe something small, like there was something funny that happened to me and it just twigged it again. It was a few months ago. It was when we could still, leave our houses. There was somewhere, I think I rode my motorbike. It was like this little gathering, a whole bunch of people I hadn't seen for a very, very long time. Our friend's birthday, a dinner that she invited me to. And so I rode my motorbike, and I left my helmet outside on the bike. And at the end of the night, I was going out. There was this guy who'd been drinking a bit too much, and he was playing darts with some other woman who'd been drinking too much. And I thought, I'm just going to leave and let them get on with it. And as I was heading to my bike, perfect timing, he stumbled back to throw his dart, and bumped the bike, and the bike kind of falls a bit and hits the helmet, and it was this thing, and it was so funny because I sat and I watched, and I just kind of took a breath, and I just went like, took a sigh, and before I said anything, he turned to me, he looked at it, and then he turned to me, and he said, "Oh man, if that was my bike," so if that was my bike, I'd be pissed. Oh, I'd be so angry, and I'd be demanding that the guy who knocked it over, like, buy me a new bike and buy me a new helmet. And I smiled because I knew exactly. I said, well, that's my bike. He didn't know that was mine. I said, that's my bike and my helmet. And he was like, oh shit. And I said, it's all good. I don't want you to pay me for my bike, but whenever someone damages your bike, you have to let them off the hook. And he kind of went, he was pretty drunk. He went, ooh. In this way that was like, I don't know, something twigged in his brain. And he was like, oh, that's a great idea. I've never thought of that, So cheeky. And so it was just this funny little reminder. And again, it was like the thing I was saying before about the third party mediator in some of those sessions years ago. Well, I was kind of surprised that this wasn't just more the norm. And then I was reminded how unbelievably fortunate and lucky and blessed I have been in the people I met and the things I got to get involved in, and being able to get involved in this kind of martial arts style. But this is way beyond martial arts. Study Kundalini yoga and you'll find this, so Buddhism, and you'll find this in some parts, and the rest will just shit you to tears. So I like, not that this is through martial arts, but due to my experience in martial arts from a very young age, I was so lucky to be able to start having these experiences. And then as I grew, and especially as I became an adult, they just kind of became normal things. And I remember with my father, one of the reasons I left was lots of issues with this. One of the reasons that I even realized that it was time to leave, that there were even issues, was that one day I remember listening to him go off in some big, whatever. And it was like I was looking at him and I wasn't feeling personally attacked or offended by what it was that he was saying. And all I could think of, I was watching the perspective, watching the experience, and it was like my mind was kind of just narrating an observation rather than me feeling emotionally charged by it. I was just observing, and in my mind, while he's going off and smashing something, my mind was like, I was looking at him and I thought, wow, this is really not where I want to be. And I think he's really got a lot of stuff going on that I actually don't think any of this is really about me. I'm probably contributing to it. I'm sure I'm pissing him off on a daily basis, but like, I'm not any of the things that he's saying I am. And it was almost like, it was the first memory that I have, so I was 16, of me really watching something play out, but just having this quiet, observed perspective. And so emotionally, it was just kind of calm. And it was then that I realized, it's like, okay, this isn't going to change. This isn't about the topic or the argument. So this isn't going to change tomorrow. I think it's time that I just left, did something else, let him just work that out. And I didn't realize at the time, but it's like, the only, really, not the only reason, the part of the reason that I was able to have that experience, I believe, was because of that in martial arts. We'd sit down and Jeff would start our meditations and we'd be listening to things we could hear, breathing, conjuring imagery, and playing out certain like activities in meditation. And so I think that its value is priceless, not because you can turn it into a commodity on a daily basis. I mean, you can make a career as a counselor, you can give great advice, you can become a life coach, all those things. But like, its value is in someone has to answer questions. Someone has to answer mankind's questions on all levels. Yeah. And I think we devote a lot of society towards answering questions of science, of like technological nature, and of scientific modeling nature, and of analysis nature and reporting. And that's all great. But it's like, but we also need to at some point consider that the answers to mankind's philosophical dilemmas and existential dilemmas, even like neurological dilemmas, that those are also legitimate questions and they need legitimate answers. And I think that it's worth us remembering that. So, if we've even got any time left in the video, we will move on to one of the activities. Oh, I can't check the time. Oh my god. Oh, 9:13. We don't actually have any time in that video. Look at that. I will set a little task for you because I said last week I was intending to do some meditation. Oh well, that was fun. Last week I'd said that it was really time that you practiced during the week so you could catch up to the breathing exercises because we were going to move on to some more mudra experience. So I was hoping tonight to start moving from this experience of observation sensation of the fingers into observing in these kinds of shapes, where it's a lot more difficult for your mind to specifically focus on the nervous system sensations while making these shapes, and potentially experiencing, while you're thinking about the left pointer finger, the right pointer finger and the left thumb and the right thumb are all kind of unfortunately meshed together, and you have to devote a lot of time to isolating what it is that you're actually observing. So for over the next week, I promise next week I'll just get into it, you can continue this activity. So where we were, the first couple of weeks we're breathing into each finger and just experiencing, exploring, conjuring an imagination of the finger itself in its relative location and position in the body. The thumb, the knuckles, the flesh, the bone, the nail bed, the tip, etc., the pad. And then started to explore any nervous system sensations, throbbing, pulsing, the sensation of air temperature changes, the temperature differential, stuff like that. And then moving on to a different finger. And then last week we started doing this. So now we're observing still, maybe just the thumb. Oh, it's tricky. You're like, oh, how can I experience the thumb without also experiencing the finger? No! And then together, the looping of the two. And then where they meet. And really define the difference between the tip of the thumb and the tip of the pointer finger. That's really hard. Black belts, you should try that. Isolate and define the difference between them. And you're like, oh no, it's just a homogeneous feeling. And then you move through the fingers. And then next week, you'll be ready to go straight into these. And then these shapes. Yeah. All of these things. These kinds of shapes. And we'll get into that next week. So hopefully tonight was useful and fun. If anything, it was a really enjoyable storytelling on my part. I hope that you have an awesome Wednesday night, Thursday and Friday, and I will see you on the Running Spirit Dojo page, unless you're watching this on YouTube later. Friday night, 8 to 9 p.m. God, I have to think of all the details. For session 6 or 7 of Hoshinden Philosophy and Theory. Have an awesome night. Farewell. I'll see you later.